about a month ago when Leo actually sauntered up to me and asked me to follow up Nick's kind of appraisal of the history and sort of where we are now with some insights into what he wanted me to do was to predict the future of housing. What would housing look like in 100 years' time? I don't know, that might be something to do with my job title, or at least the middle word. I'm not going to try and be a Nostradamus though and actually give you a clear picture, because it made me start to think as well a little bit, if you can recognise the film and the kind of font style we've used. I don't know if anyone's familiar with the film. It made me think about Back to the Future, in particular Back to the Future 2, and how hard they actually found it to get everything right about the future when they were just looking sort of 30 years ahead, back in 1980 whenever it was, looking to 2015 when that film took place. And we're going to have a little bit of fun with that kind of concept a bit later, so we'll see how that goes. So again, I also felt we ought to give a little bit of a nod to the fact that I think it is very difficult for all of us at the moment to get a sense of where the future lies. And I do have to be careful with this word, that because we live in an age of VUCA, which is, things are incredibly volatile, really uncertain. There's a lot of complexity and a lot of ambiguity. So we're in a position now where, okay, there are government ministers coming to this event, but essentially there isn't really a government at the moment, so we're in that leadership contest, which is going to create uncertainty, and we know everything could change once that's decided and we have a new Prime Minister. Obviously there's Brexit, that's enough said. There are uncertainties around the economy, but within that context as well, there is a huge amount for us to be excited about, and within that uncertainty and that sense of things needing to change, I think there's a huge amount of opportunity for all of us if we can come together to find the answers. I don't think it's about one person finding the answers. So what I'm intending to do today is I've set myself a little bit of a vision. It's to give you my aim is really to give you some insights into what the future might look like, one version of the future. I can't possibly cover all of it, but in one slide, 9 images and 6 minutes, but anyone who knows me, I love talking, so the 6 minute is going to be a bit of a challenge, but I'll do my best. And the thing that's really, for me, driving the future of construction, but the future of housing, is going to be climate change. This year we've had the UK Homes Fit for Purpose report from the Committee for Climate Change, followed very swiftly by the Chancellor's statement with the future housing standards, followed again by the Climate Change's report for net zero by 2050, which is a huge challenge that's been set, and within that we've got to reduce, in particular, the energy consumption of homes, or of the country, by 2030 by 50%. So there's a huge driver, as well as the fact that we need to fund it, and there's a huge demand. And I know things you didn't mention. I saw recently, Nick, you said a waiting list of 8,000. There's the land issues, and do we need to build up? So alongside that, but energy. So the future homes, for sure, for me, are going to be low carbon, they're going to be low energy, they're going to be very water efficient. I think there's going to be high degrees of ventilation, air tightness, and there's going to be thermal comfort, because, as you said, there's a growing awareness of health and well-being is really important as well. Now, where have we heard that before? It sounds a lot like code for sustainable homes, I know, but energy, though, is not just about, so there'll be more of a much bigger role for renewables, as we all know, but energy is, electricity represents about 20% of the energy picture in this country, which I'm sure you probably all know. But the big question is really how will future homes be heated? So I'll start out, through this process, ask a few questions. It won't be gas, so renewable will play a part, but there's discussions and research about heat pumps. There's people looking into hydrogen. And there's other exciting developments around community energy as well. I think we will see there's people like Blueprint who are already doing a lot of exploration with that. But I was at an event called Fully Charged Live, which looks at energy and transport and is really looking at the feature. I don't know if anyone else went along to that, but it's not just about electric vehicles. It's about the whole picture of where the future is heading. And there was a company called Ripple who are then looking at how we as individuals can take a stake and have a share in these energy companies, in renewable energy companies, and then not only do we get supplied by that, we can then also benefit from an income from having a stake in these. And I was actually talking to Matt Beale last night, and he said, you know, the thing about change and uncertainty and predicting the future, there's always the pace of change at the moment is rapid, and he talked about social energy schemes, which is kind of taking that another, where it's really self-contained and they're not linked to the grid. So I can see all of those things emerging now into the future, and what homes might look like, not necessarily in 100 years' time, actually, perhaps, you know, 10, 20, 30 years' time. And then, well, how will they actually be built? And we've all heard many times the phrase modern methods of construction. So started to think in 100 years' time or even sooner, how modern will modern methods of construction be? Or will off-site construction actually be the norm? And for me, it's a question of when will we make a shift from construction to a production mindset. I wanted to do a little bit of a sort of a show of hands here of how many people actually think that 50% of the homes that get delivered in this country will be through off-site manufacturing, say 2 years' time. How many people think that? Yeah. What about 5 years' time? Yeah. And what about 10? Yeah, so, and 10 years isn't that far away, so quite a lot of the room thinks that's where we're moving in just 10 short years, which will be a big challenge, but that's interesting. So the next question is, what will build them? And yeah, will we be living in houses that have been built by robots? And that seems amazing, but these things are happening. There are people prototyping and houses being built in factories on a quite small scale as we speak. That's what's happening, and a lot of it's in Europe. Will they be 3D printed houses again? They are being piloted and trialled. These are the sort of technologies that we've got to tussle with and understand how sustainable that is. I then thought, well, and this connects to more involvement of tenants, because, well, or is the question actually who will be building them? And I don't know if how many people have heard about impact hubs, but there's a growing number that sort of emerged from London, I think, and then there's one in Birmingham, and I heard the Birmingham Impact Hub, and that's about community builds and community schemes. But these things are really happening. People are coming together, and they're young people, they're professionals, they know what they're doing, and they want to take more control of their own communities and start to take charge and deliver their own schemes, which does tie in with the community energy. And I did notice this week the Nottingham City Council, I don't know if you might be able to shed light on that, Nick, but they were advertising for a community build liaison officer role. So maybe the next Impact Hub is going to be coming in Nottingham. So one thing I'm really certain about is there'll be a lot more with Generation Z, and there will be this community power. There'll be a lot more need for us to engage and understand what the end users really want. And I think I was even talking to Grant in the break, and a tack he's taking on a new development where we've kind of gone and shown them what we can do or something, got planning. Now it's a question of going in and saying, well, what is it you want? And I think there'll be much more of that needed. I think maybe Nick's even finding that already is, in the light of that we've got to ask what the communities want. So I think that's an exciting and new way of looking at things. Also, no surprises. I think the future homes will be absolutely tech enabled. Well, I know it's a phrase I'm not sure about, but smart homes. But that's the question there is really how will those homes be managed, and I think that also fits in with the way we use energy, and it'll be a lot more automated. So thinking about virtual power plants, so the home as something that is managed by technology, automated, very energy efficient, and that also manages how you feed your energy back to the grid, because I don't know the percentage, but a huge amount of time our homes are stood empty, and they are kind of virtual power plants if we start to introduce renewable technologies and wall batteries and that kind of thing. We have an energy storage device, which would be our house in the future, which can be used to help electricity companies deal with peaks in demand. So that's very much how I see it going. And as we start to move into that world, I can see that we're creating, if you like, technology boxes. So very much a bit like the Tesla is seen as a piece of technology that just happens to be a car. Our homes will become almost another piece of tech for us. And how will we buy and rent them in the long-term future? Will it be through some of these organisations? Now, and that sounds perhaps ridiculous, but Amazon are already investing in a house building company. Their whole remit is to disrupt marketplaces. So I think the disruptors are going to come into the market and really shake things up and challenge how we purchase and rent houses in the future. This one blew me away because I only really heard about this, and I don't know if I'd be interested to know if anyone else has heard about this, but then it's a case of how will they be maintained. And actually universities are already developing self-healing materials. So the future, we may well have self-healing homes where the render needs repairing and it repairs itself, the driveway needs patching and it will patch itself. They're actually working on that kind of technology as we speak. I might be a long way off, but wouldn't it be, we have to consider whole life costs and maintenance. I'm not sure about that one. I don't know if anyone's heard, but they are investing in self-healing materials. So self-healing homes could be a thing in the future. I then thought about in the context of the circular economy. So if we're moving into off-site construction methods, and we often think of I think we talk about a house, is it a 60-year life or something like that? I mean, some of them probably have a 100-year life in reality, but we think about that end of life. But why does it have to be end of life? Why is it that they have to just get demolished at some point? And as we think about off-site construction and the types of materials we use, and this growing need, drive of climate change, and why couldn't we design houses in such a way that they could be easily refurbished or reused, recycled, relocated, repurposed, by choosing different kinds of materials and different construction methods. And I was speaking to Lungfish, and the technology is there for dismantleable buildings that can be moved around, and that doesn't have to sort of challenge quality requirements. So I believe that's the way we'll start to think as we move forward. Then the ninth image is thinking about how will the mobility revolution actually impact on how we design cities, how we design our homes. So there's a lot of talk now around making our cities, to tackle this problem, much more interconnected. I mean, Nottingham City have been in a lot of that with the tram and investing in electric vehicles and so on. So there's the whole sustainable transport and a desire for own well-being, to be able to cycle around a lot more or walk a lot more, and everything being more interconnected. But in particular, our attitude to the car is changing. So some of these things you sort of think, well, that's about the car, isn't it? But then 90% of the time, our cars aren't in use. They're either parked at work or they're parked on our drive. People, the next generation, I know Leo's attitude, possibly, and David Woodhead think their next car, they won't own a car the next time they need to purchase a car. Am I right? That's what you're sort of thinking. So there's the electric vehicle concept, but then there's this idea of mobility as a service and hailing cars, but also automated vehicles are kind of on the way, and again at fully charged, most people think within 10 years there will be automated cars available on our roads. So what will that mean for urban design? But you know, will garages be the thing of the past? I mean, I can't remember anyone who would parking the car in a garage anyway, but you know, will they actually be such a requirement? What about driveways? What about density? What about the street seed? I don't know all the answers to how that will be, but if it comes, it will change how we have to think about the design. So there's a lot of things there I've not touched on. I'm sure I've not even gone to retrofit and what we do with all the existing properties that we've got to bring those up to speed, and that's possibly the biggest challenge. And I've not touched on what about the scarcity of land. I've not touched on things like population. Currently we're talking about an ageing population and population growth, but in some parts of the world actually the birth rate is very much on the decline. So will there be as such a housing need in the future? All sorts of questions really. But there really is, you know, do I know what housing is going to look like in 100 years? Of course I don't. But a lot of this technology is either here now, or it will be in the next 5 to 10 years. So it's coming, and we really do have to act. I mean, if we don't act, and you can see I'm quite liking film themes here. I mean, if we don't act in response to climate change, the future could look a little bit like a scene from WALL-E, whereby in fact the human race has had to leave the planet because it's no longer inhabitable. Could that be in 100 years' time? But you know, that's what we all have to recognise. This is a serious issue. The second one is Ready Player One. So that's another post-apocalyptic film, and anyone who's got children might have seen it. It's a really good film. But they're living in small sort of shanty-style towns and living a virtual lifestyle because basically most of the planet's uninhabitable. So there is no reason for us to get there because there is we have a fighting chance to do something about it. But that was just to set the scene. And I want to share a quote from somebody called Gus Speth now as well, because I've talked a lot about technology, but technology alone is not really the whole answer. So I will read this to you. So Gus Speth is an American academic environmentalist. He's been a government advisor, and he's now got something called the Next System project. So there, he said, I used to think the top environmental problems were biodiversity loss, ecosystem collapse and climate change. I thought that with 30 years of good science we could address those problems, but I was wrong. The top environmental problems are selfishness, greed and apathy. And to deal with those we need a spiritual and cultural transformation. And we scientists don't know how to do that. And I think it's just very, very powerful. And I'm also reminded of Kevin MacLeod saying what we need now is a post-industrial revolution. So there has to be transformation culturally, and that's about all of us. There's got to be a transformation at government level, industry level, organisation level, and individual level. And I'm asking myself, what am I willing to sacrifice in order to meet this challenge? And what am I willing to do? Which is a question for all of us. I think at a government level we do need an integrated government policy that sort of catches up with science and public opinion. Very hopeful that will come. Once we get through this moment of impasse. I think the industry needs to start and think of itself as different in a different way, from a construction mindset to a production mindset. I also think there needs to be a huge change in procurement, the way we approach it, and more and more importance needs to be put on social and environmental value, and companies that are investing in that. There certainly needs to be more collaboration across industry. I think it's about us working together at front end. None of us are going to tackle these complex issues on our own and come up with all the answers and solutions. We do need to work together more front end of projects and that does mean again a different approach to procurement. And also, we need to see a change in the way innovation and research and development is. You know, we're in a low margin industry. It is very hard to invest in innovation and R&D for all of us. So we need to look at a different way of providing for that. All this change won't come. And I was also want to finish with I was at a speech. I think a lot of you probably were at the awards dinner where Mark Wakeford, the vice chair of the Midlands Construction, gave a really impassioned speech actually about a call to arms. It was absolutely fantastic. But if we don't think this is kind of here, clear and present, he said, imagine talking to your grandchildren and them saying, Grandma, Grandpa, why did you let this happen? Why didn't you do something? And what that made me think about is actually that's happening at my dinner table, because I've got a 20-year-old, an 18-year-old, and a 15-year-old, and rest assured they feel very passionate about this, and they're asking me right now, what am I going to do about it? How did we let this happen? So that it's really clear. Will it happen? I really think there is an opportunity for us now. I think it's time for a construction revolution. I think the impetus is there, very much like with the Addison Act. Maybe it's driven by fear. In that case, fear of people revolting. But again, it's similar, isn't it? I think people might revolt if we don't do something about this. So, if not a revolution, I think it's an evolution over the next 5 to 10 years, and we really need to rise to that challenge and do something about it. Because also, taking it back to the affordable social housing, I think if we do this, it will make us more efficient. And it shouldn't be more expensive necessarily to do this. It should make housing more affordable. So that was a bit heavy, wasn't it, really? And then those who know the film, you'll see what I did there with the word heavy. So we don't want things to be heavy in the future. I want to lighten the mood a bit, with just a little bit of fun to finish off on. And there are prizes. There's prizes. And I'm not quite sure how I'm going to do this because I'm not going to do a formal vote, but I just wanted that question there, what 5 big things did Back to the Future 2 get right? So it's first come, first served basis. Put your hand up and have a go. I'll give you a little bit of time to think about it, and we'll see who can get the most. Go on then, Ian.
The electric trucks.
It's not on my list, but I don't think they were electric. They were flying, weren't they? But okay. That's not one on the list.
Self-tying shoes.
I'll give you that because go on and see how many you can get. But that's wearable tech was one. They also had watches. There was a doc. He arrives and he said, he looks at his watch and he says, give it 3 seconds. It's going to rain from his watch. So there was wearable tech. Yeah.
Hoverboard.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's not on the list. Somebody's done a hover shoes, didn't they, or something? But yeah. Yeah. Was that virtual reality stuff? Yeah. I'll give you the virtual reality. So you've got one. Yeah.
Mobile phones.
No. Anyone else up for guessing?
Well, the proof that the sequel's never as good as the first one.
So you won't want one of the prizes. Shall I just do a reveal? Yeah. So yeah, we've got wearable tech. Video conferencing. I guess it was hard for some of you haven't seen them. But they didn't have mobile phones, but there was a device that they paid for something on some sort of mobile device. Virtual reality, and also drones. There's a scene where Doc Holliday is pursued by a drone-like device. So I think I've got people that I can give 2 of the prizes to. So I've got another question. What was the one big thing they missed? Thinking about
Housing. Modern housing.
no.
Internet.
Did well. I suppose they sort of did with having web. Yeah, but not. Yeah, it's not what we're thinking of. But I'm not sure they kind of have video conferencing, which must have been a World Wide Web kind of thing. But God, it's obvious. It's obvious. What's the biggest thing that's impacted other than the World Wide Web? What's happened?
Climate. Mobile phone.
Yeah, well, what Leo said, smartphones. Okay, so that worked well, didn't it? I love the films and stuff. So what I'd just like to end with is, I hope we've started a conversation, started some things. I certainly like to engage with anyone in the room that's sort of thinking about how we embrace that, all those future opportunities, and how we bring it together. I hope you want to come on the journey with us into the future. Thank you very much.